Now at this point you might be thinking, Percy, aren't you kind of nitpicking? Yes. You've enjoyed sequels with bad dialogue before. You've been able to ignore plot holes before. You've even been made to care about heterosexuals every once in a while, so why are you picking on this movie? Well, the answer's simple. Not only is this movie just bad on its own, but in the context of the franchise that it's a part of, it's a million times worse. The original movie was so good. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was a great little standalone story, with action and adventure. And while there are a lot of things that bother me and feel like a downgrade when I'm personally comparing the first movie to this one, the real problem is the characters, and how they don't even compare to the ones we had in the first movie. Let's start with Henry, by starting with Will. Will was a great protagonist. He wasn't just a good protagonist because he happened to have some nice facial parts and a love interest. He was a full character with his own emotions, opinions, and reactions. It was easy to root for him because we understood him. We first see Will as a little kid in a pivotal moment in his life, a moment that informs his opinions and his relationships to the other main characters. And then we do a nice little time skip to see what kind of person he grew into. He became a blacksmith, a skilled labor job that puts him at the bottom of the social food chain, but one that requires him to be mindful and patient, and one that oftentimes lets him cross paths with Elizabeth, the little girl who saved him as a child and who he grew to have feelings for. After Jack is introduced, we get to see this magnificent sword fight scene, where we learn even more about his skills, opinions, and life.
Who makes all these?
I do. And I practice with them 3 hours a day.
You need to find yourself a girl, mate. Or perhaps the reason you practice 3 hours a day is that you already found one and are otherwise incapable of wooing said strumpet.
I practice 3 hours a day so that when I meet a pirate, I can kill it.
As the story progresses, we see his worldview challenged, and we feel his confusion and frustration as he goes against what he previously believed for a noble cause. He has to team up with a pirate to save Elizabeth, because he hears that Jack Sparrow knows about the crew that took her. It's just a little storytelling gimmick called character motivation. Not that doing things for your parents isn't a fine enough motivation to get you going. In fact, in a plot-driven movie, it makes sense to have a simple character motivation to bring the audience into a situation. Rogue One, another Disney property, did a similar thing. Jyn Erso wanted to continue her father's work to end the regime that ruined her life and killed every parental figure she'd ever had. But Jyn had more to her than just daddy issues. She was raised rich, then her life got flipped when her dad took her and her mom into hiding. Then she was raised in a war zone by the rebellion. Then she was on her own. She's jaded, she's guarded, she's skilled, she's driven, she's self-centered, but underneath all that she still has the capacity for empathy. A capacity that she tries to deny because she knows it will get her killed. And eventually it does. So what does this guy have in comparison to his dad, and to this other Disney product who was similarly seen as bland by the general public? Where did he grow up? How did he get the skills required to lead a seafaring adventure, to do whatever he's doing? What makes him trust the people he eventually teams up with? Like I said earlier, they treat this character like he's an orphan rather than the son of the Pirate King. So he's basically a blank slate. We know nothing about him other than he knows a lot about curses. He's just kind of here. We don't have any real reason to care if he succeeds or fails. Now we've got Karina. What does she have going for her? Oh, her dad. Okay, so what's the motivation here?
It was left to me by my father. He believed I could find what no man has ever found. I will not let him down.
Hold on a second. You have no proof of that. She could have been written to say she was inspired to pursue science because of her father, but she knows absolutely nothing about him. Her entire motivation is based on a book that was left with her at an orphanage. We'll get back to that later. In contrast, let's look at Elizabeth. We get the sense of Elizabeth's upbringing as a rich girl on the ocean, as a noble person in a colonized area, and how that sort of makes her sadly peerless, and also an obvious target for when the pirates show up. For reasons I only now as an adult understand. Despite warnings to the contrary, Elizabeth is fascinated by pirates in the sea, and that fascination actually saves her life. By enacting parley, she unwittingly makes herself a part of the narrative. It gets the overall plot crashing through the waves, and we're along for the ride with her because we don't know anything more than she does. Will and Elizabeth were great protagonists for this story, because every time they speak or are even on screen, we learn about them and like them more. I mean, really, what happened to writing characters? I mean, look at what else we've got. Jeffrey Rush terrified me as a child. He haunted my nightmares as Barbossa because that's how good he is. Barbossa in the first movie is a great role for him to flex in because he was so crazy and scary, and we have no idea what he's doing. But what is Barbossa in this movie? What does he do? What on screen does he do that demands my respect or fear as an audience member? I know he's kind of doing that thing that I actually really love where your worst enemy turns into like your weird neighbor, but what does he do in this movie to show how smart and or formidable he is? He surrenders to the bad guy immediately and sells out Jack. Okay. And while we're talking about good actors with nothing to do, what about Javier Bardem? He's terrifying. He's an actor of intensity who can deliver a butt-clenching performance.
I seen you was from Dallas.
What business is it of yours? Where I'm from? Friendo.
But contrary to what some directors believe, you have to actually give an actor something to work with for them to flourish as a performer. What has this character done on screen as the hashtag big baddie to make me fear him? He kills some people, sure, but the gore is so over the top that his performance can't do anything for me as an audience member, and the sound mixing is so bad I can barely hear what he's saying half the time.
The last ones joined together to try and defeat me. But they soon realized he was hopeless.
Does the music need to be this loud?
Hit them below the waterline! Hobble up!
What was that?
Do you know this pirate?
Only by name.
Alright, listen to that again.
Do you know this pirate?
Only by name.
Yeah, you know, it was really important to hear that piece of paper and not, you know, our lead antagonist. We can hear Henry, but again, the paper is really what's important. Who the hell mixed this? Did I mix this? Okay, we're getting off track. These characters were just written too blandly for me to care, even the returning characters. I mean, just look at Jack. Oh god. We gotta talk about this now. As you may already know, the character of Captain Jack was just a pirate in the original script. There was a Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disney World, and they decided to make a movie out of it. So they had Will be the fish out of water character, and a pirate was written to be his companion and the informed character to fill Will and the audience in on the situation at hand. Somewhere along the way, Johnny Depp decided it would be cool to play Jack as like a drunkard, and said he wanted him to act like an old, washed-up rock star. It was so unique and weird, his posture, his speech, everything about him stuck in your brain afterwards. If you weren't at least halfway through elementary school when the first movie came out, you may not remember, but an entire generation of actors spawned from this role. The two god-tier performances that I have seen people of all races and genders point to as their reason for becoming interested in acting in theater were Johnny Depp as Captain Jack and Heath Ledger as the Joker. And people still use those characters in auditions, still wear those costumes to conventions, still profess to loving them because they were so well crafted, so clearly a labor of love. Characters that stick in your brain the way Jack did are rare, which makes what happened to him all the more disappointing. By the time Pirates 2 rolled around, Jack's character was being rewritten to fit that persona, so his character was progressively getting wackier and wackier. And then as things went on, especially by the time we got to On Stranger Tide, Captain Jack was just being written as a parody of himself. No longer clever and off-putting because of his lack of diplomacy, but just a worthless idiot who got out of situations because of dumb luck. Take this scene with the guillotine. How does he get out? How do Jack's skill and wits get him out of this situation? They don't. It just works out for some reason. But how does Captain Jack escape this situation from Pirates 1? By utilizing his surroundings in a way that people around him don't consider. This version of Jack, the one from this movie, it looks less like a role being played in a professional setting and more like the actor is shit-faced at a party and one of his friends was like, "Hey, Johnny, do the pirate voice." Johnny Depp's like, no, okay, just one time.
Kill me, and I'll be dead. And then the other dead won't be able to have the revenge against me being dead.
This is the problem here. A problem that bleeds into the bad script and bad. This movie just doesn't have a heart to it. A center. That's really why I care at all. Because there's a difference between a movie that is just okay and one